You brought up in mind a story. There was a chief customer success officer, actually from an enterprise company that came onto the podcast. And she was doing exactly what you're talking about. The whole goal was how do we support? How do we help? How do we add value to the existing customer relationship? She said to the point where they would call us up just to spitball ideas, just to run things by us. And she said, the people on my customer success team, they had attributed to them an annual $2 million in new revenue. The sales team had annually attributed to them an additional $200,000 in ARR. What a difference. And this idea, again, going back to the land and expand, we have a tremendous opportunity to expand. We have a tremendous opportunity to create those relationships with our customers. There shouldn't be a CFO or a CEO out there that isn't in the SaaS world that isn't looking at NRR, recurring revenue, and like, how do we get that number up? And how do you do that? It's through the success of your own customers. Everything that we're talking about here, it comes right back to the basic financials of building a long-term sustainable business. And that was something I wanted to ask you too, because we tend to work in short cycles. Markets, they reward short-term success. And the way that our sales team is usually set up, it's like quarterly quotas. Like you go to board meetings, and one of the very first things they talked about is how's this quarter turning out? What's the next quarter look like? So you had a very specific opinion about how we need to start changing that dynamic internally and resetting expectations that have a bit longer horizon and why. And I just wanted to ask you about that.
I think it kind of goes back into, at some point, we all turn into this coin-operated machine. So it boils down to the comp and what are we incentivized by? And again, it comes to some of these core functions within the organization, like salespeople. Again, it's not the point of sale. They are not going to be comped just for booking a $2 million deal. Their compensation needs to align to the customer success in some form. So I think really thinking about the comp structure and the incentivization of not just the sales team or the CSMs or CS teams, but also like how can we bring marketing to be accountable to do certain things, because there are a lot of functions that we don't really think about in terms of accountability. Because when you think of bookings, you think about sales, and when you think of expansions, usually you think about, okay, it's the CS team or the account reps who are focused on renewals. So I think there is probably more accountability that could be shared for the organization and the functions within the organization to work closely for joint success and ultimately better value for customer and customer success. So I think there is an aspect of we need to start thinking differently in sort of the incentives and the comp models. So that's number one. I think the second part is really figuring out from a customer perspective, the trust aspects, because it's not just us saying what we are going to do for the customer, but how do we build sort of customer testimonials? This has happened many times over the years in my career. You have a contract that's redlined so many times across the customer. And you do have the aspect of saying, okay, customer, if we deliver value to you, you will agree to be a customer testimonial for us or a reference for us. And most of the time, the process, it's X'd out because people don't want to say it, because sales says, I just want to close this deal. I don't want to deal with this. But I think those are things that happen in the sales process where sales says, how can I close this deal ASAP so I can show success? So I think the sentiment and the behavioral patterns that happen, and I'm sure every CMO or every salesperson will probably listen to this, and I know this happens every day to me. So I think the customer trust part, which is where we started, can only be validated by the customer, and the ability for us to be in a place where a customer volunteers and wants to be your voice, represent your company, is something that's truly important for customers to get there. If you think about companies like ServiceNow or Salesforce, think about that. The reason they're great is because any customer working with them would be willing to, at any point in time, get on a plane, come to something. So I think the aspect of incentives, again, thinking about it broadly, is how can marketing be made accountable? How can CS be made accountable? How can finance be made accountable? Because we do have pricing conversations where finance comes to the table. There's a deal, go, no go aspect of things. So I think all of those aspects need to be thought through by companies and not just go back to saying, okay, we need a pipeline from marketing, sales is going to close the deal and then put it over the wall and it's CS's problem. That needs to like completely be demolished and really thought through as it's 4 people going together across 4 different functions with success, that's joint success, and goals that are MBOs, business objectives, that all those executives are agreeing to.